From President Biden's infrastructure plan to immigrants to what's happening here in the 1st Congressional District, I speak exclusively with 1st Congressional District independent candidate Courtney Burks for this edition of Quintin's Close-Ups. And if you haven't already, subscribe to my YouTube channel and like Quintin's Close-Ups on Facebook. Courtney Burks, welcome back to Quintin's Close-Ups.
Thank you so much for having me again, Quintin.
Oh, you're very welcome. Obviously, you're a single mother.
Yes, sir.
You are an independent candidate for the 1st Congressional District, which current Representative Nancy Mason covers. And obviously, you're a fighter for justice and truth. What are you fighting as far as justice and truth?
I think with our national and local governments, I don't think there's been a lot of transparency, and I don't think there's been a lot of people wanting the truth to get out about numerous things. One, COVID, the COVID vaccines, there's a lot of, data shows side effects are kind of dangerous. We don't really know a whole lot about that. There should be more testing on it.
Okay.
And in the 2020 election, there's a lot of inconsistencies, as I'd said before. Nobody's really speaking out against that or trying to find out what exactly happened, and with any videos or any data that was involved in all that.
Now, you talk about COVID. Let me ask you an interesting question. If you were in Congress today, would you be in favor of disabling patents for the vaccines?
No, because I think that's important. With something that a lot of people see as so serious, we need to be able to interchange, information and different techniques and, technologies back and forth without getting into, the patents and trying to get the rights to certain things. But then again, I think it also should depend on each company as well as what they would want to do with their own vaccines and patents, because it is their technology, it is their research.
Right.
But I think it's important to be more open that way. There can be better, developments, and we can find out better things, better consistencies between one vaccine and another one.
Which vaccine is consistent right now in your mind?
I think the Johnson & Johnson seems to be the best one that most people have said they haven't had as many side effects with, and it's just a one-time shot deal. So I think that's probably the one, and it came out later, so they were able to see kind of what worked, what didn't work, anything they could have improved on instead of just rolling it out right out front and just letting people use it.
Now, are you actually in favor of allowing Americans to indiscriminately travel to those countries who are being kept from access to the vaccines with no oversight about the potential to cause further outbreaks?
I think it should be, every person kind of knows what they're most comfortable with. I think it should be available to everybody. I think, it should be, consent, and people should, it's more of, if you have a doctor who's going to tell you what is good and what is bad, and then you kind of make that, that decision for yourself. And that's how it should be overall. People should be able to say, this is kind of what I need, or people may say, this is not something I need. And they should be able to have that freedom to choose for themselves as individuals.
Now, obviously, you talked earlier about data. What particular data are you looking at when it comes to the vaccines?
There's a lot of data where people, they've had the vaccine and then they get COVID, or they have the vaccine and then they die of COVID, or they're having, some serious side effects to whatever ingredients are in it. So we need to understand what exactly is going into it before we just put it in our bodies without really thinking about it. I mean, when you get your booster shots, when you give it to your children, this has been data that's been going on 40 plus years that we know the side effects of these things, and you can ask your doctor any questions. And it should be the same way with this. We should know exactly what's in these vaccines, the ingredients, and some people do have side effects because they're allergic to certain things, or it doesn't, it doesn't go well with their body, just like any medication. Some medications would be fine for you, some you're going to have some side effects from.
Now, have you been able to talk to a doctor about those side effects from the vaccines?
No, I haven't yet. That is something I am looking into doing, though.
Okay. Let me turn over to, obviously, the infrastructure bill. President Biden, as you know, unveiled a more than $2 trillion infrastructure and economic recovery package on recently last week. The plan aims to revitalize the United States transportation infrastructure, water systems, broadband, and manufacturing, among other goals. And I know there's going to be an increase in the corporate tax rate to 28% and measures designed to prevent offshoring of profits that will actually fund for the spending, according to the White House. Why do you believe there's only 5% of the bill going towards infrastructure?
Because I think that they've packaged it so nicely to where, they're going to allocate 5% and then they're going to put the back to their own, pet projects like green energy, green transportation, instead of actually fixing the roads. I think that a lot of infrastructure can be done within the state and it can be done within local governments as well. We just have to kind of look at the cost and let each, state and city kind of decide what really works for them. I think it should be a little bit more than 5%, put towards it, because some of our roads and things are really bad, and we need to have, some research and data and see which, roads and interstates and things like that are the worst and need to be fixed on and worked on first before anything else does.
Now, what data are you looking at when it comes to roads and infrastructure here in the 1st Congressional District?
Well, I know that in the state of South Carolina, there's 149,000 miles of road, and to fix each mile is about 141 million, or it's 1 million to fix a mile of road, but we have over $1 billion in funds for that, and we've only spent I think 9 million so far. So that's a big question as to why are our roads so bad. And locally, you can look at a lot of wasteful spending. Like here in the city of Charleston, they granted land to a developer, and then they bought it back for 26 million. So it's like, why is that more important than fixing the roads here? Because there's a lot of roads downtown that are in terrible shape. There are roads, all over, North Charleston and everything else. So why are we wasting money on things we really don't need? Now,
obviously, you said that they only spent like $9 million on roads and infrastructure here in South Carolina. Where do you think the rest of the money is?
I think it's, I think they're just holding it, or they're putting it in other projects that don't necessarily, geared towards fixing the roads and potholes and things like that, the sewer lines, things that should be looked at.
Now, where exactly do you identify those pet projects in the 1st Congressional District?
I think a lot of it is development. They're kind of waiting for developmental companies to come in and put up condos before they really want to restructure any of the roads, and that's kind of a problem too.
Now, do you believe the 5.7 with the Biden infrastructure plan in your mind cause hyperinflation?
I do. I think over time it's going to cause a huge problem. I mean, companies, if you raise taxes, they're not going to cut their spending. They're going to raise the prices and pass on to consumer, and since the lockdowns have happened, people have been struggling, and it's a bad time to raise taxes and prices on goods. I've noticed in the grocery store, the prices of goods have gone up. Something that used to cost $2 now costs $1.50 more, and you see that with the gas as well. They shut down the Keystone pipeline, and the oil companies are not just going to eat that price; they're going to raise it and put the price onto us to buy them.
How much do you think that will be raised by for the next 5 years?
It depends, because if it stays the same, I think it's probably going to be within the next year. Is probably based on what we have. I'd say the prices on goods is probably going up about 10%, and if we keep raising the taxes, it's going to go up 20% within the next 10-15 years easily.
Now, I understand that the corporate tax hike won't raise that much until at least 2036. Where should they get the rest of the money to fit this infrastructure bill?
Like I said, I think it's a useless bill. I don't think they should be, asking that much. I think a lot of it should come from the local governments and the state governments. They know more about their economy. They know more about what, the roads look like. They know more about where the need for it is better than the government does.
Now, do you believe in your mind, because you just talked about green energy, do you believe this is like a Green New Deal 2.0 in your mind?
It's the same thing. They just rebranded it to make it sound better because it didn't really go well the first time they introduced it. So now they're trying to repackage it into something different. And we don't really know how much this is going to cost. I mean, initially you have, let's say you build a building, you have, 1.3 million you're looking to, to spend. Then the cost is kind of increased more than what you thought. And you have to loan out more money. You would have to, borrow more money. You have to spend more money because there's things that come up that you don't initially realize will happen or foresee happening. So it's going to be, instead of $2 trillion, it's going to turn to $4 or $5 trillion after this. It's all said and done.
Now, do you believe they are using the same infrastructure plans that were supposed to be fixed under the Obama infrastructure plan?
I believe some of it is, but I believe a lot of it is more focused on green energy than the Obama infrastructure bill was. This one, I think, focuses more on, wind turbines and solar energy and renewable resources more than the Obama one did.
Now, what green energy projects, that is, would co-sign or approve on for the 1st Congressional District?
Well, I think there's something I've been thinking about, a lot of since I moved here 10 years ago. I think a rail system would be a great idea. If you had it solar powered and where you could store energy as well.
Okay.
I think that'd be a wonderful idea for tourism, transportation, connecting employers with employees, helping people who don't have cars get from point A to point B. And you can get there much faster and you don't have to have as many cars on the road.
Now, I know back in 1989 from my research, most Americans paid for rural broadband, school technology, etc. with phone line surcharges and E-rate taxes. And reportedly, people are still paying on those fees today for every phone number, I believe. The Obama-Biden administration spent billions on infrastructure, according to my research, that was supposed to be shovel-ready by 2009. Why do you think people are still paying for that today?
I think because it's kind of been forgotten about. I think there's so many things that's happened since 1989 that's kind of pushed a lot of stuff that they've kind of had an agenda on, kind of pushed back, and it's kind of forgotten about, like many other things.
Now, those shovel-ready projects, which ones of those particular projects would be ideal for the 1st Congressional District?
Like I think that did you say shovel or shuttle?
Shovel-ready.
Shovel, like
yes, it's 2009. I'm sorry.
It's all right. I mean, I think there's a lot of things I would like to see done here that would really make an impact. One is the rail system. Like I said, it would help the economy, especially in the poorer communities like McClellanville, Ridgeville, places like that really need the business and the tourism to help boost their economy and give people jobs. Another thing I would like to do would be revitalize some of these minority communities, like on Columbus Street, America Street. Get a bunch of volunteers and local groups that are willing to volunteer money or time or anything to go into these communities and help fix up the buildings. And there's a lot of kids on foster care that are being phased out at age 18. They have nowhere to go, and that's going to make the homeless problem even worse. It should be a place for them to go to learn certain skills, to be able to be on their own. And domestic violence is a big problem here in South Carolina. There should be a place, more resources for women to go to, or even men who have been abused to go to, because that's also a problem. Men are often overlooked, and they're important too. So we should have these things in place to help, people. And there's a lot more things I would love to do and be more hands-on with. But those are kind of like the main things I think are very important here.
If you were in Washington today, what bill would you put forth, and who would you get as a co-sponsor?
There's a lot of bills I'd like to get put forth. One, I would like to get a lot of the historically minority communities protections, just like you would protect a historic, building.
Right.
We should protect these places from, development, gentrification, and put some caps on taxes for the property, because a lot of these people are being misplaced because they don't have the money to pay for the rising taxes, because it's such a popular place to live. So the city does raise taxes, and a lot of people just don't have the money. And we should be able to have families be able to pass their homes down to their kids and their grandkids,
Okay.
and things like that. I don't think it's necessarily fair that they should be pushed out just simply because somebody else wants to move in and they can't afford it.
Now, you talk about cap on properties. How much would that be for the next 2 years?
That I don't know. I'd have to look at the previous taxes on downtown Charleston or any other historic communities and see what they have been versus what they are now.
Okay.
And that way you can kind of gauge, are they increasing 10% every 2 years, or increasing 20%? What exactly is the historical data on that? That we can kind of gauge where it needs to be.
Now, I know President Biden obviously campaigned on his experience in Washington and the ability to unify the country. Why do you think up until this particular point he hasn't been able to pass a bipartisan legislation?
Because Joe Biden he's always labeled himself as a centrist, but he's gone far more left than he ever has before. He's always bragged he's the most liberal member of Congress, and he's kind of gone from being a centrist, as he calls himself, to even far left, as more of a radical progressive. And you can't have those policies and then expect Republicans and conservatives to sign on to that. I haven't seen anything yet to where I would say that's a great idea, I can sign off on it, or I agree with that, maybe we can change a few things.
What are those fair centrist ideas that you could sign off on for the 1st Congressional District?
Well, environmental impact. He's always been about conservation of our resources, and we should. But again, we're building so much and developing on so much area here in the Maritime Forest, and
Right.
Sullivan's Island is being cut down because some people want a better view of the beach, and that needs to be stopped. That needs to be mitigated. I think that's a centrist idea. I think both parties can agree on that. And we need to find more in the middle ground where people can come together and say, yeah, that's a good idea, we should definitely do that.
Where should the middle ground be on these other issues?
I think we have to, find, immigration. I think that we should absolutely control our southern border. We should know who comes in, who doesn't. There's a lot of other countries who have very strict laws, and you can't go there unless you have certain papers, certain IDs, and a lot of them you can't go into unless you've had certain shots, certain examinations, but also we also have to understand that these people come from very poor areas, very poor countries, so we have to find a way that will do both. And I've kind of been thinking on this a lot lately just because of the whole southern border crisis.
Okay.
And I think that we should have a border wall, and we should take people in, and then maybe send them back to Mexico like we were doing before, to wait and do a vetting process, because we have to know that people are not coming here being criminals or smuggling children or sex trafficking or any of the horrible things that are happening right now. We need to make sure we do this a safe, correct way. And I think one way to do that is to help people become citizens, because it costs thousands upon thousands of dollars to become a United States citizen. It's not cheap, and most people cannot afford that from poor countries. So maybe we can have some universities, have staff donate their time, or have people raise money, donate money to a cause to help these people come here, teach them English, teach them, some education, teach them some kind of skill, that way when they do come here, then they have, some kind of job they can go into, that would help them, be on their feet and not have to depend on, the government assistance programs are already very heavily burdened. So there's a way you can integrate both. You just have to find a way to do it. But people really have to, because the Republicans, they always go towards build the wall, but then they don't offer anything else. And the Democrats are like, well, just let everybody in. That's not really a great way to do it because we see what happens now in the southern border, and it's complete chaos down there. So you have to have a way that you can do both, and that's kind of the problem. Each side is kind of stuck on, well, my idea is right, your idea is wrong. No, there's a way we can do this, but we have to kind of look together and figure this out on how we can have both and come in the middle.
Now, would you be in favor of closing the borders to anyone crossing without the proper requests in place?
Absolutely. I mean, like I said earlier, you can't go. Mexico has tougher much tougher laws on entry and everything else than we even do.
Right.
And every other country does too. You can't go to any other country without proper paperwork. You can't immigrate to any other country, become a citizen without the proper channels. There's no reason why we can't as well.
And 60% of the illegals in the country are here on expired student work visas, that is, reportedly. What type of oversight committee do you want to see for that?
They should really update it. They should really keep track of when they expire, and then have an updated system as to where they're living. Every so often, every year, they have to re-register. They have to show where they're living, where they're working, where they're going to school at. That way they can keep up with it. And then when they're expired, notify the people that when they expire, because some people may not even know that they've expired, because it's not really something anybody really looks at, and have them renew it, or send them back to their country of origin.
Now, let me go back to the 1st Congressional District. As you know, Nancy Mace is the current representative for this district. What has she done good?
I can't really think of a whole lot she's really done for the district. I mean, she talks more about her. I mean, I can give you several instances that don't really have anything to do with the Low Country. I mean, she had a caucus of single women. That doesn't really help anything. I mean, single mothers like myself, my son's dad died a year and a half ago. I mean, some are, cancer for kids that are low cost and help with transportation during that time. That's important, because, families can't, afford, babysitters and exorbitant amount of price of daycare and things like that. Having after school, programs for kids, tutoring programs. I mean, there's, medical, insurance. There's, I know for me, it's expensive for me. Like, for my son and I to have medical insurance, it's $175 for me and him out of each paycheck. So that's a huge chunk of my money that I can't really afford, but he also needs, health care as well. So, I mean, these are things that really matter, not so much as, she doesn't really know what it's like to be a single mother. She has her ex-husband, who I'm sure helps out with the children. She has her parents that help out with the children. She's not hurting for money. She's not really struggling in any way. Like, and my son has had behavioral issues because of his dad dying, and that's understandable. And my dad raised me as a single parent, and my mom kind of abandoned me when I was 2. I hadn't seen her my entire life, and I had issues growing up like that, and so did my sister. And these are issues that we need to have maybe better health options for instances like this, and to help kids mentally, because it is a lot for children to handle. So we need to find better things
now
for our kids.
What if you were to be elected, what would you do differently that she's not doing right now?
I mean, she passed her bill on protecting natural resources, which is good. Like I said, everyone can sign off on that. But again, here in her district, they're being, development permits being handed out like candy left and right. And that's something that really should be protected. If you're going to protect, areas all over the nation, your district is most important. Look what's going on at home. Nobody's trying to stop the maritime forest from getting chopped down, which is an absolute travesty. That's home to many animals, the birds, migration. Right. It helps with, tidal flooding, hurricane flood. And, it's a problem. All this land, is being filled in on these marshes. These, environmental places are being impacted. And, you need to be more more hands-on in the community. You need to be seen. You need to be doing things actively. Like I said, I would absolutely love going to schools and, poor, rich neighborhoods, wherever, and spend time with these kids. A few hours out of your day to spend with them, be like a special guest in their classroom, so you know what they're learning. They see you in there, parents see you in there, teachers see you in there, and interact with these kids. I think that's very important as well. And like I said, I would be more than happy to go into some of these poor areas and grab as many resources as I can to kind of help out and give people purpose and give them a reason to rally around something and give them hope. Hope is so important to everybody, and I feel like a lot of these communities, they don't have hope, and they see you being active in the community and trying to do something. You may not be able to fix it, but if you just try it, and they see trying to put some effort into it, that can make all the difference, especially in the younger generation who feel like they've been lost, and they are lost in many aspects. We have to give them a purpose to be more active, more wanting to help their fellow neighbor as well, instead of just worry about what am I doing today? How can I make today work better for my family and me and everything else? Like I said, I would protect a lot of minority communities and try to keep as many generational houses as I can in the family. I think that's a very important connection from the old world where their ancestors were to where they are now in their own lives, and having that kind of connection between your past and your family and the future to your children, that can be a huge impact as well.
Now, what resources would you grab for the district right now, particularly for the minority communities?
I think find the people who are willing to donate their time, donate some kind of money. Maybe you can do a fundraiser with some of the businesses here, or just have a lot of people who just want to help but just don't really know how. Habitat for Humanity is a great resource, and maybe they have other resources, or maybe there's some national resource that I don't necessarily know about right now. But just trying to make phone calls, trying to connect and try to connect to these minority leaders, because they know where the problem really is. They know what their what their community people are facing. They know what's wrong, and getting them more, connecting with them more will help you make a better impact. And other people see their leaders in their area, in the district, they'll make them want to help more too, to make them want to be more active in their own areas as well.
Now, what problems do you foresee that the 1st Congressional District will face in the next 2 years?
Growth. I think growth is a huge thing. There's not as much protection on land. I've lived here 10 years. I've seen so much being changed and built upon. It's sad. A lot of these areas are losing what it means to have their identity, and a lot of these identities lie within the land layout, with the beautiful areas that we have, beautiful natural resources. Prices are going up on homes. There's people who can't afford houses because they're just too expensive. And there's people moving from other areas down here, from like New York, New Jersey, where everything's locked down and everything's way more expensive, and looking for other places to live. And they're buying a lot of the houses. They can outbid local people out of these homes. There's just a lot of things that are going on, and gentrification is a big one. There's a lot of people who are going to be displaced. If we don't get a handle on this now and figure out a way to stop it.
Now, what is the average home price in the 1st Congressional District?
It's about $276,000.
And what's the current tax base for that district?
That I don't know. I've been doing research. I haven't been able to find it, though. I don't know if I'm looking in the wrong places, but I haven't been able to Google that and find a good answer.
Courtney Burks, thank you so much for your time. And again, welcome back to Quintin's Close-Ups.
Thank you so much for having me again, Quintin. It is wonderful to be here, meet you in person.
Meet you in person, absolutely.